What is speech communication? Maybe your family would find it weird that you will study speech communication in UP. Ano yan? Gagawa ka ng speech? Public speaking ba yan? Speech communication call center training? Nag-oral com ka naman nung senior high. Bakit kailangan mo pang mag-speech communication? In this video, we will define speech communication, explore this area of study, and eventually debunk some misconceptions about the field. Ready? 3, 2, 1, scene. Let's begin by defining speech communication. Speech communication is the study of human interaction and its use of verbal and nonverbal symbols to impact different communicative phenomena. From this definition, speech communication provides a focus, which is human interactions. When you create, maintain, or break relationships, speak in public, perform in a space, or teach or facilitate discussions, you can study those things in speech communication. What you have learned in oral communication in your senior high is one part of speech communication, but speech communication is beyond oral or verbal communication. We also study nonverbal cues, or how we communicate other than language. We also study how our environment affects our interactions and study different communicative phenomena or events that involve the exchange of information. In other words, we basically study human communication and how we interact with other people or with our environment. So, is speech communication public speaking or performance? Yes and no. Yes, because they are part of what we do and study in speech communication. But speech communication is also beyond public speaking and performance. Later, we will learn some key areas in speech communication. Then, what is the difference between speech communication and mass communication? In our video about broadcast communication and journalism, we focus on communicating through a medium. Mass communication focuses on the exchange of information to large audiences using a channel or a medium. But when we study speech communication, we focus on interactions or how verbal and nonverbal symbols create meaning in various communicative situations. Some stereotype speech communication as call center agents' profession. Well, it may be your career path, but call center is not just your main career path. Speech communication is not limited to one profession. You have lots of career options, especially in industries that involve training, education, public relations, and organizations. We will explore career paths later. Others stereotype speech communication as a field where you write and analyze speeches. This is actually true because aside from studying human interactions and performances, we also study rhetoric or the art of persuasion or public speaking. We study various communication theories and become more grounded in theory so we can give a deeper understanding of a particular communication phenomenon. We don't just write and analyze speeches, and we cannot guarantee you that we can write you the speech that you want, because that's not our main job. But we can do those things and do more thanks to our focus on understanding interactions and different communicative phenomena. So, what do we actually study in speech communication? Here, we will explore key areas in speech communication: rhetoric, performance, interpersonal communication, and instructional communication. We already defined rhetoric as the art and skill of persuasion and argumentation. In speech communication, we study the history and theories of rhetoric so we can be more grounded in studying rhetorical artifacts or a collection of symbols that is meaningful in a culture. This can be speeches, documents, songs, video clips, movies, television shows, and other things. We don't just study how a particular person or group makes speeches or persuade others, but we make sense on how symbols and performances done by a person, thing, event, or movement impact both individuals and society. In speech communication, we don't just perform or act, but we also continue to rethink performance and to produce creativity in whatever space we have. Here, we go beyond the traditional roots of theater. In other words, we don't just study theater, but we also study the things people do and see in everyday life as performance. Space here is now beyond the theater stage. Space can be anywhere, and performances can be anything. When we talk about interpersonal communication, it's not necessarily face to face communication, although most of what we study involves face to face communication. However, we need to see interpersonal communication as interactions or how people have conversations with each other, how people form, maintain, or end relationships, how people communicate within the workplace, how people communicate with other cultures, and so on. Here, we also study how we interact with ourselves and identity and how these things affect our interactions with others. In interpersonal communication, we focus on theories and concepts that involves the use of verbal and nonverbal symbols. And finally, speech communication also focuses on instructional communication or examining teaching, training, and learning as inherent communicative processes. In speech communication, we don't just provide an applied basis such as teaching and training, but we also study the science behind those things. We study how a person develops and how this development affects how we communicate and learn. We also study pedagogy or the systematic study of teaching. Here, we learn effective strategies on how we train and teach people that we can use not just in school, but also in the workplace or other spaces. And by studying instructional communication, we also study the meaning of messages and how studying the meaning of messages helps us become better communicators. Wow, we have so many things to explore and learn in speech communication. And because of that, we also have various career paths to choose. Basically, anything that involves communication, whether speaking, listening, reading, or writing, can be your career path. Do not limit yourself in media industries because communicators are also needed in the business and corporate world. You can venture into marketing, advertising, and public relations. The skills you learn in speech communication can be used in holding or planning events. Your instructional communication skills are not just for academic careers, but you can also use those in training and human resources. Speech communication is also a good pre-law course, as it will help you organize and construct your thoughts and apply rhetorical concepts in law. You can also use speech communication in STEM and medicine. You can be a speech pathologist or a science communicator. See, you have so many options for your career. And remember, communicators are on demand today, especially because of technologies such as the media and the internet. Speech communication is an interesting field of study. You study the world and even almost everything by focusing on interactions. However, we also face challenges in this field, such as rethinking speech communication, especially in the new normal setup, where there is a need to use technology and the internet in communicating with others. This involves the challenge of having immediate feedback, how online spaces affect our personal development, and how this phenomenon redefines pedagogy. We also face the challenge of redefining opportunities for us to learn more things because we know that communication is dynamic and interdisciplinary. Remember that communication is a product of both humanities and the social sciences. And in speech communication, we apply the concepts, theories, and research methods in both humanities and the social sciences. Because of this, we have access to study our world through the lens of speech communication.